During the French Revolution or after the French Revolution, you start seeing the man named Napoleon Bonaparte gain power. So Napoleon had previously been able to gain a position as a military leader. So as the countries had kind of gotten involved in attempts to challenge the revolutionaries, Napoleon was able to gain his name through kind of leading this attack against Austria. And so he's pretty successful, and over time, he is encouraged to seize control of the Directory and establish this coup. I remember the Directory was established after Robespierre's rule, and that reign of terror came to an end, and it was the leader of 5 men. So Napoleon is going to seize control of the Directory and really initially kind of signs these treaties to end this conflict in Europe. And Europe by 1802 is at peace, right? So these countries, Britain, Spain, Austria, have kind of come into this alliance, not an alliance, but at least an end of conflict with Napoleon. And he votes to create a new constitution. So at this point, we've seen this kind of radical change in France. We had an absolute monarch, then we had a constitutional monarch, then we had the Committee of Public Safety ruling, and then we had the Directory, and now we have Napoleon and this idea of kind of changing the government yet again. Now, Napoleon does kind of bring about some positive changes. He brings in changes to taxes. He recognizes that those political inequalities is what led to major problems. He is going to lead into the government kind of controlling the school system, but providing for the school system as well. He reestablishes a relationship with the Pope as he realizes that, the reign of terror had led into Robespierre challenging and eradicating religion or attempting to. And he creates the Napoleonic Code. However, this code is going to challenge freedom of speech and freedom of press. And so where we might have seen some political equalities formed, our freedoms are stymied. And so we don't really see this movement of positive change in that aspect. Um, and Napoleon, shortly after, 5 years into his kind of rule, crowns himself emperor and starts building this empire. The problem is that different types of things are occurring that kind of work against Napoleon, or at least things that are going to frustrate him. So he realizes that there've been a lot of spending, so he sells the Louisiana territory to Thomas Jefferson, which is something that Jefferson really struggles with, but you'll learn about that in U.S. history. The Haitian Revolution, which we'll get into, is something that he has to kind of deal with because it was a territory that France owned, and he finally just kind of lets Haiti gain its freedom, leaves that territory alone. But then he also is able to gain significant territory, and you can see that in this map on the right. So the French Empire and the various regions that he gains. Now, Napoleon is actually from this island of Corsica. So he is going to increase some territory throughout, right? And then you start seeing that some of the states begin depending on him. So the problem Napoleon makes is he starts out with the continental system. Huge issue for him. So he is basically going to blockade trade with Britain. Well, he also leads into this conflict of, or it leads into conflict in America, in the United States of America, because there are colonists that support the French and support that French Revolution, support Napoleon, and then there's others that don't believe that their trading, their economic equality should be challenged. And so this actually hurts Napoleon, this blockade does. And so then this will eventually lead into, or we'll see, the Peninsular War, where he is going to enter into a conflict with Spain. And then he decides, and this was probably one of the poor decisions that he makes, to invade Russia. And he might have been a little bit successful, but when you invade Russia and you invade Russia in the winter, things don't go well because the Russians kind of adopt this policy of burning everything that they see. So as Napoleon ventures further and further into Russia in his attempts to kind of get to Moscow, they are willing to burn down. So he starts losing supplies, and then winter sets in, and his men are starving and they're freezing. And so he has to retreat. And so Napoleon will be exiled shortly after that in 1814. And so he is exiled to Elba, and Louis, the 16th's brother, will actually regain control over France. So now we're back to that monarchy we had, kind of this dictator in a sense with Napoleon. Now we're back to a monarch. But Napoleon does not stay put, and he is going to come back, escapes from Elba, and rules for about 100 days. And then he makes the critical decision, but one that will hurt him, to fight at Waterloo. So the Battle of Waterloo against Britain and Prussia. And he loses. And so this will lead into him being exiled again to the island St. Helena, and this is where he will die. So Napoleon is going to have this huge impact on France because we see this revolution of, we don't like, this political inequality, and so we try and attempt to form, that national convention, and then we have the constitutional monarch with the legislative assembly, and then that doesn't work, and then we see the rise of the Jacobins and this reign of terror, and then we see the Directory, and then we see Napoleon, and then we go back to a monarch, and then we go back to Napoleon, and then Napoleon falls, and we go back to a monarch. So France is going to have this very tumultuous revolution. And out of this is also going to spring the Congress of Vienna, which is where Russia, the leader of Russia, Prussia, Austria, Great Britain, and France are going to meet together. And the goal is that there should be a balance of power in Europe. It's also going to weaken France so that there should never be another Napoleon or another individual who takes over in Western Europe the way he did. And so they kind of build these other states to surround France and kind of keep France in check and kind of keep control. But it also leads to the increase in the rise of Britain as kind of this leading force in Western Europe. We start seeing these conservative ideas of what a monarch should be that exist, and so there are challenges there. And then there's also kind of this rise of nationalism and this pride of one state. The Congress of Vienna is an impact of, ultimately, you can look at an effect of the French Revolution and this chaos that results. And this whole idea of, well, what freedom should exist and what equality should exist? Will these revolutions lead into kind of these challenges to equalities? And Napoleon, who promotes or at least kind of leads on this idea of political equality, is going to challenge individuals' freedoms and their ability to kind of respond to him. So we'll see again that conservative movement that occurs with the Congress of Vienna. And we're going to move into the Latin American revolutions. I'm going to do them all in one video, even though there's different ones, just because there's not as much information with them.